Greetings! Welcome to the show where we'll be unraveling the mysteries behind the digital world Iliad. If you have not completed Digimon Story Time Stranger, I recommend you come back after you've finished, as this will contain spoilers. Without further ado, let's start off with these three, the host computers of the digital world. Yggdrasil is based off of Norse mythology, and much of the digital world they rule over reflects that. Kunlun is the host computer of digital world Shambhala. Shambhala is the newest digital world that is heavily influenced by data from the East Asia region, and it is governed by the Tentai Hachibushi. Pardon me if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. There's some theory that Shambhala is going to be the focus of the new anime, Beat Break, but that is for an entirely different video. The etymology of digital world Iliad comes from the poem Iliad. The etymology of Homeros comes from the author of that poem, Homer. Iliad, the poem, is set during the last 10 years of the Trojan War. Speaking of Iliad, the secret organization Adamas comes from the participant of the Trojan War, Adamas, who was killed by Merinos in Troy. We've seen these goat people before in media based on Greek mythology. I think most people watching this will probably immediately think of Phil from Hercules. Agilmon is based off the creature Agapan, half goat, half pan. Some literature writers, such as Pliny the Elder, uses Agapanes as a race of satyr-like men who live in Libya, which is where I think most modern media derive the Agapanes from, since Agapane was one of Zeus's sons, or Apollo, depending on which source you read. I don't think about that too much, because it gets a little weird when you do. In a similar manner, Agiochusmon comes from the epithet Jove Agiochus, denoting Jove, holder of a goat or Agus. As we already know, Time Stranger is based in Greek mythology. However, the names of the Olympus 12 come from the Roman versions of the Greek gods. For most of them, you can just take off the mon at the end, and you can find what Roman name of that Greek god. I'm going to go over them as they appear in their mega ultimate forms, depending on which media you want to use. Minervamon comes from the Greek goddess Athena, who is associated with wisdom, warfare, and handcraft. One of her major symbols is the snake, which appears prominently on Minervamon's helmet. And Minervamon's evolution, Mervamon, is based on the Etruscan of the goddess Minerva, and she is the goddess of war, art, wisdom, and medicine. Minerva's character contributed a lot to the Roman goddess Minerva, but she's not a straight-up import of Athena, as she has her own unique traits. Murukimon is the odd one where the just take the mon at the end off doesn't apply. The Japanese name for Murukimon is Mercurymon. Mercury is the angelization of Mercurius. The Greek god that Murukimon represents is Hermes, god of herds and flocks, travelers and hospitality, and diplomacy. You can see the correspondence with hospitality since he is in the warrior's watering hole. He is seen trying for diplomacy before launching an attack to take back central town. So why the complicated name? Mercurymon was already taken in the dub for Digimon Frontier, and the Japanese version was not much better in naming, since the name for the English version of Mercurymon, this one, was this spelling. So to kind of work around it, they decided to take bits of how Mercurymon was pronounced in Japanese, Murakurimon, and they just shortened it a bit. Why they didn't just call him Hermesmon was to just preserve the intentions behind the Japanese name, which is what the English version does really well, actually. Volcanismon comes from Hephaestus, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, the god of fire, volcanoes, artisan, blacksmithing, and a few other things. In Digimon lore, his domain is smithing, which makes sense for him to be at the bottom of the factorial area with all that heat he has access to for smithing. Junomon comes from Hera, goddess of marriage, women, and family, and protector of women during pregnancy. The best parallel I can come up with for here is that she was tasked with protecting the Digitama that would eventually become Agilmon. Bacchusmon is the equivalent of Dionysus, god of vegetation, festivity, fertility, and theater, which is why he is the guardian of the Gear Forest and why he's always drinking and throwing parties. There's plenty of vegetation in the Gear Forest and plenty of space for festivities and theater. Venusmon is Aphrodite, the goddess of love, passion, and pleasure. Aphrodite's symbol is the dove, which is why Venusmon has one as part of her evolution. More on Venusmon in a second. Neptumon is Poseidon, god of the sea, storms, and earthquakes. His symbol is the trident and fish, as you can see on Neptumon's helmet. We see Shellmon and Houndmon, or Divamon if you prefer the English version, develop some feelings for each other. As he evolves into Neptumon, he doesn't forget the selfless act that Shellmon did for him, and not only returns the scarf she gave him, but also has a ring made for her. Poseidon was one of Aphrodite's consorts, and it seems the game's story kind of plays into that relationship that they had. Marsmon is Ares, god of war and courage. He was very much against Mercurymon's attempts of diplomacy, and took that frustration out at the Colosseum in the human world. He wanted a more direct approach in addressing the Titans that were taking over Iliad, and currently occupying the place that they once called home. Being the god of war and courage, it makes sense that he finds himself in the Colosseum to vent his frustration and to eventually fight against Chronomon. Apollomon is the only one on here that doesn't change the name from Greek to Roman. Apollo is the god of sun, light, arts, and knowledge. A little bit more about Apollomon later. Dianamon is Artemis, goddess of nature, young women, and archery, which is represented in her attack Artemis arrow. Archery is also attributed to Apollo, but a lot less so Apollomon. Artemis's symbol is the moon, which is represented on Dianamon's shin guards. We've known since the first time we were in Iliad 8 years ago that Chronomon and Lunamon are brother and sister. This is because Apollo and Artemis are twin brother and sister in mythology. Their combined form, Grace Novamon, refers to the astronomical event Nova. It comes from the Latin word for new. Charismon represents Demeter, the goddess of harvest and agriculture. Sirenmon is based on the Greek mythology creature, the sirens, birds with the heads of women. They would use their voices to lure sailors to their death with a bewitching song. Instead of killing sailors, Sirenmon uses her voice for Bacchusmon's parties and to fend off the Titans. I'm guessing the connection they're making to make Sirenmon go into Charismon is that both of them are women and birds in one, since the actual form of Charismon is Charismon medium. Jupitermon represents Zeus, the god of sky and thunder. In Greek mythology, Zeus is the king of all gods, which is probably why the rest of the Olympus 12 was waiting for Jupitermon's arrival in the Gear Forest. And Zeus is the son of Kronos. Chronomon is based on the Greek god of time, Kronos, which is why he has the power to manipulate time to begin with. Much like Chronomon, Kronos was the leader of the Titans. He used the Titans to overthrow his father, Ouranos, to become the king of all gods before being overthrown by his son Zeus and being thrown into Tartaros. Agumon being a Chronomon's creation, this is a direct parallel to the fact that Zeus is Kronos' son. As for Chronomon challenging homeostasis, you could technically say that this is a parallel to when Kronos challenged Ouranos, and it's just a timeline where he failed. Every digital world has a dark field or area which is connected by cositis, which is a totally different video on its own. In the world of Iliad, it exists outside of the current, and the Titans were exiled here. It represents the underworld from Greek mythology, and the king of the underworld is Hades, the god of the dead and riches. He is represented by Plutomon. Since the Titans were thrown into Tartaros after Kronos was overthrown by Zeus, I'm assuming that's why they made Plutomon the acting leader of the Titans in Time Stranger. It seems like the Titans can't avoid being thrown into the underworld, no matter if they succeed or fail. Titamon is the representation of all Titans in Greek mythology. In the Digimon reference book, he was born from the hatred from all the Digimon felled by the Olympus 12. To make Time Stranger work, it makes a lot more sense for him to be a leader of faction of Titans instead of the representation of all Titans, since the story of Time Stranger is the creation of the Olympus 12. The world tree in the Gear Forest isn't really something from Greek mythology. That's more towards Norse mythology. However, the oak tree is a sacred tree of Zeus, and prehistoric Indo-European tribes would worship the oak tree and connect it to a god of thunder, which could have been an explanation of why Jupitermon appears in the Gear Forest when he makes his first appearance. And that can also explain why the current comes from the Gear Forest. The Akashic record comes from neither Greek nor Norse mythology. It actually comes from occultism. It is a compendium of memories of all events, actions, thoughts, and feelings that have occurred since the beginning of time. In Time Stranger, it is the system of Iliad itself. That's the end of my info dumping session. I know this video is a little all over the place, so if I missed anything, let me know down below in the comments. All I ask is that you be respectful to the other person on the other side of the screen. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications, and I will see you on the other side. Goodbye.